Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into Andrelczyk Amusement Academy. Today is Andrelczyk Amusement Academy number 16. We are doing coasters that have both a lift and a launch hill. If this is your first time here in the stream, welcome in, welcome in. My name is Brian Andrelczyk, and I am a real-life theme park designer who likes to play RCT. And I like to teach the finer points of realistic coaster building in the game. So every 2 weeks we take a theme and pick 9 coasters which fit that theme, and then we go ahead and build them here. And then sometimes take some requests from the chat or do some other bonus ones in here also. Today, as I said, the topic is lift and launch, which was something that was brought up in one of the Discord chats earlier, I think this week. Q-Dude, actually, who's in chat, was the one who brought it up initially, I think, which kind of got me thinking about this and thought it might be a good topic. Also, hey, Ricurious, welcome in. Welcome in. So what do we have today? So we've got 9 coasters, and it was actually a little bit of a challenge to pick the 9 that we were going to have. There's some similarities, but not too bad. So first we'll start out with Powder Keg, the S&S launched coaster with a lift hill. Then we'll go over to Curse of Novgorod at Hansa Park. Then we'll have Takabisha. Then we will have something like Firechaser Express at Dollywood. Then DrageKongen at Dejure Summerland. Then after that, Gekion Live Coaster at Tokyo Sega Joypolis. And then we'll look at Maverick and Atlantis Adventure. And finally at Inferno, or Dark Mare as it used to be called, at Cinecittà World in Italy. Yeah, V1, I remember. It was back in the day when you couldn't really do it because it was you either had the lift hill or nothing. The best you could do would be the booster lift on the B&M track, and that was like as far as you can get. So, yeah, it's... So, and Q-Dude, you bring up a point here probably is worth discussing here. It's what counts as a lift and what counts as a launch is definitely up for debate as you want to do it. I would consider, in this case, Maverick is an LSM lift hill, more or less, because it's a lower speed, consistently paced thing to get you up to the top of the hill, versus a launch which has some kind of a 0 to something acceleration. So that's sort of how I define it. There's certainly gaps in that, but for the purposes of this, these are the 9 that we're going to do, and we'll go from there. So as we always do, let's jump over to the coaster database, and let's start out with Powder Keg. So Powder Keg we actually looked at a couple of streams ago with Buzzsaw Falls, the premier liquid coaster, which is what this was beforehand. So beforehand, it was actually this. It was a liquid coaster that had a splashdown and a lift hill and a little bit of track. When they got rid of that, they reused the lift hill and some of the track, and they put in a launch coaster, an air launch coaster. So this is an interesting one in that it has and I guess it's not so uncommon, but it has a launch first and the lift second, which in my opinion almost seems backwards, because I feel like the lift hill sort of negates the adrenaline that you've got going on from the launch. It also has this really interesting diagonal or horizontal yet inclined transfer track, which is pretty cool and somewhat unique. Hey, so welcome in, welcome in. So why don't we take a ride on this one? I know we did here somewhat recently, but we will do it again, and let's follow along. Before we get through there. There we go. Thank you to Coaster Force, as always, for our POVs. The ride reuses the existing station and some other things, at least I think it does. You can actually still see the ride trough for the boat ride that that used to be here, which is kind of interesting, in my opinion. So here's this pretty neat inclined switch track that takes you up to the launch area. Being S&S, this is a compressed air launch, which always are very impressive because they have pretty strong acceleration. You'll notice in some of the pictures that there was a reverse spike. The fact that it's there does not mean it's used. It's only for failed launches, and it's really more so theming than anything else. So we can put it in there or not. I almost kind of don't, just because of easier to deal with without. But here we go, fast launch right into an airtime hill, which is kind of unique. So you get that great airtime off of the launch. And now we get into some corners, probably just a lot of these big hills and corners. Then right here, we transition into the old track. So this is the old Buzzsaw Falls track. You can see with the different lattice track, just a little bit different there. Then we'll take our lift hill up. This was the old existing lift hill. And then off of the lift hill, the track is once again going to change right here back to the S&S track, the newer track. And then we have a new drop here by this sort of weird maybe water splash thing that I don't really feel like it ever got finished. And then back into our brakes. So, pretty interesting coaster. A little bit of an oddball one for sure. Let's see what we can do with this in the game. So I'm going to go ahead and use the, let's see, can we do, can't do boosters on the limb launch track, which is a little disappointing. So let's see which one we want to use. I think the acceleration is pretty poor, if I recall right, on the on this one. So why don't we just, for the sake of making this ride, we're just going to use the B&M track, because why not? A little surprising to me that the limb track doesn't have boosters. Like, that's a bit of an odd one. Okay. So rather than the launch track with the spike and everything, we're just going to go ahead and build ourselves just a standard launch. But you can do the spike and everything and do the transfer track. It just tends to look a little funky. In the game, you can kind of glitch it across, which we can do, but for the purposes of this, we won't. And that may be the case as we just go back and we change this over to some limb track at some point. What I didn't quite do here is think about our terrain, but okay. Get in there in a minute. Now, train-wise, I'm actually inclined to go with the limb trains, the premier trains. Now, they have over-the-shoulder restraints, which isn't correct, but they do have sort of the big boxy feel of the powder keg trains. Powder keg operates a 4-car train, so we'll go ahead and do the same. Now let's go ahead and test here. And get that kind of spiked top hat there, so we're gonna put a pretty nice top hat. Actually, that speed is not too bad. And you do want 10. You generally want, when you build a launch coaster, to have the biggest hill. But you do typically want the biggest hill to be right after your launch. It's called launch proofing, essentially, so that if your coaster gets over that launch or that hill, it will make the rest of the course no matter what. If you have a failed launch, like it stops pushing it here, then you just won't make it over, and it will go roll back and then reset. I agree with you though, Q-Dude. I do wish adjusting boosters was a little bit easier. Not the most user-friendly, I would say. So a lot of the stuff on the real one is these real large corners. Which we don't quite want to do here, just because we're going to run into some things. You definitely felt the old S&S arrow influence. You got a lot of the earlier arrow-looking supports. Actually, what we may do is do something like that, where down. Don't quite want to be down that far. We want to have some slower bits on our rides. It does look very much like a Hopkins coaster. You're absolutely right. It's not the best looking, no. It looks almost cartoonish to me. It's a little bit of like a chunky track. It's a very smooth coaster. I very much enjoy the ride. It's just I almost forget about it just because it's such a kind of oddball ride. Like, it's a great launch. It just doesn't necessarily. I would say it doesn't quite stand out as far as major launch coasters go. Like, I don't. When I think about launch coasters, I don't necessarily think, "Oh man, Powder Keg, that's the one." Uh, but like, it's one of those good rides that does its job, and that's about it. There we can get a little bit of a crossover, perhaps. Drop down some more. What we need to forget, or not forget, is that we are trying to get to a lift hill location. Should wrap this up. Yeah, many of what we'll do today are going to be family-oriented type coasters. And you're right, though, when you need the coasters that are just there, like all the mediocre coasters out there were once, the headlining new ride. And I always think that's kind of interesting to think about, is all the ones that we don't necessarily look at nowadays and go, oh man, that's the one, but were in their day doing decent stuff. Somebody invested a fair bit of money on some of those older rides. So we'll make our nice big transition here. That actually puts us back where I'm not a huge fan of. All right, let's do this. Yeah, I'm really curious to see if that's going to be rolling launches, as in like it's going to go across a couple of different launches, or if it's going to use the same launch, or what the issue is going to be there. I think it's a pretty curious looking ride, so I'm pretty interested to see what it's going to do. Like I'm really interested about the layout. It's an awfully large size coaster for what it is going to be kind of claimed as. Alright, I need to get just underneath of that, so let's one more out. The art engineering has done a fair bit of stuff. A lot of it has been contracted type work, so they don't necessarily get the headlining name on there, but they do quite a bit of work. Ah, shoot. I was hoping to... There we go. Perfect. That's what I want. Am I going to run into something? But I'm going to run into this. Actually, no. Just barely, which is actually kind of nice, because now we get this weird head chopper element thing right here. Hello, Candy Balls. Welcome in, welcome in. Thank you for joining today. Alright, so let's put a couple of breaks here. I'm not going to do a block. I probably don't quite need this overall height either, but I want it for that head chopper, to be honest. And theirs was almost a flat bit, but we probably need to make ours a little more interesting. So let's drop down like this. We'll use one of the unique ones there. It's an awfully large drop. Yeah, the flat downward curve to banked. Yes, not in the, I guess in the other direction. Does it? Yeah, no, it does in the other direction. Nope, those are existing. Hey, Silver Zayev, thank you for the follow and thank you for coming in. Yeah, it's a good game to play. Open RCT, if you're not familiar with it, is an open source version of RCT2, and the developers have done a whole lot to bring in some pretty nice new features that the original game didn't have, and it actually supports a lot of really cool stuff. So highly recommend checking it out. It sounds like you're already familiar with it, which is great. But yeah, it's definitely pretty cool. I wonder why it didn't take. That's weird. I'll rename it for you. Should be on. Let's see what's. All right, connecting. Aha! I think. Here, hang on. You run that real quick. I think we're connected now, but I will rename it for you. No, you did it right. It's just I think I lost a little bit there. There's a lot of good communities out there if you're looking for folks. We certainly have. It's honestly surprising to me just how many groups are out there still doing this game. I definitely recommend. Actually, half of the people in this chat can probably point you to a lot of good places. Alrighty. I'm trying to figure out what to do with all this speed, but I'm probably just going to come down into the brakes. We'll just call that a day, and we'll start at a larger height here. So let me go with 45, 40, 31, 7. Coaster has the shortest launch track. I would say that new one in from Intamin in the Nickelodeon Universe Mall. That would probably be my guess, because that one goes from 0 to a lot in a very quick amount of time. So would consider that one. Okay, and then we'll turn. Let's give ourselves a hold break here. Yeah, Hagrid's is pretty. There's that first launch that is pretty short. It's not too bad. Although all those launches are very slow. I mean, yeah, you can. There's fast launches and slow launches and limbs and slims and all sorts of other fun stuff. We're gonna do a little pre-launch bit right there, just to at least give us something to show off. Okay, so this is one of the challenges of building a ride that's got terrain on a map that does not have terrain. So we're kind of stuck with that, as it were, but that's okay. You can imagine this station being closer to the ground, and you can fill up some of these other places. So you can just go ahead and change to the limb track, or you can change to the mini roller coaster track, which has nearly every piece. A cannon's not a bad consideration. That is a awfully small thing. Ooh, that's not good. Let's adjust this just a little bit. Coming in hot to that brake run. Get up to 27. 22. You're trying to just reduce the amount of stress on the chain, which is what a brake run like this would do. Now, granted, that older Arrows S&S and everything like that were a lot less concerned about that, and you can throw it onto the chain no problem. But for longevity of your ride hardware, you probably want to avoid that. That is an odd pre-lift section, Shock at Rainbow Magic Land. It's a strange looking ride. So ours is a little more compact than the real one of these, but that's fine. We can go with that. There we go. That's a much smoother engagement to the lift hill. Let's bump our lift up to 7. This nice little overhead chopper here. Let's go ahead and not that. Let's put our same type of colors here, so not too bad. Okay, so there's our powder keg. A little more compact, not necessarily using the terrain, but still has the general tenets of it. All right, close it off. Alrighty, so next up, we'll go back to the database and let's look at this one. This is Curse of Novgorod. Novgorod being a city in Russia, as RCDB is very nice to point out. So this is a Gerstlauer Eurofighter. It's a custom Eurofighter. Older one, but this was one of the larger Eurofighters at the time, 130 feet tall, which is a pretty substantial one. And it's got a launch and a lift hill. Let's look at this photo, which shows it pretty well. It's also largely enclosed. So there's an initial launch section and overbanked hill, or curve, I guess. And then you have this outdoor section, a roll here, and then there's a vertical lift and beyond vertical drop inside this tower, and then an overbank corner here into the brakes. Some pretty excellent theming also. Let's go ahead and have a look at the video. We might not be able to see a whole heck of a lot with it, but we will give it a try. See what there is to see. Go back to Coaster Force for this POV. Loving our ads today. There we go. I would love to get to this park for a lot of reasons, but this being one of them. Now the park, like a number of places in Europe, built the coaster first and then added over time. Yeah, the vertical lift is not the greatest. But there is this cool Pepper's Ghost effect, which is neat. So that's very cool. And the facial projection there a little bit bright, perhaps. Alright, and now picture, if you will, dropping and launching into this corner. And now we're outside and blinded. Okay, over an airtime hill. Single dive. Then this sort of butterfly-esque turnaround, sort of do some Magnum XL200 vibes. Into our one and only inversion here, this somewhat awkwardly placed roll. And now, as Intamin is so nice to point out, the slow-moving, somewhat awkward vertical lift hill. Thankfully, there's some theming and some other things, so you can kind of picture that going on. I don't know, actually. I think Magnum is over, not under. But you're making me question that now. So here's the vertical drop, or beyond vertical drop, 97 degrees. Then there's an overbanked airtime hill, and then a long flat section of track, followed by a little airtime hill just at the end, and that's where we wrap up. And then you have your little surprise scenery coming down in your face. Definitely better for the actual ride experience than you can see from a video, but nonetheless, a nice ride. Yeah, there was a good photo to leave this on. You can kind of see some of the early constructions here. This overbank turn, and here's the actual launch. Launch one goes into this real tight corner here. But let us go back to RCT. We'll give this guy a try. Use our Giga Coaster track for this one. I think I want just a little bit more height because we're going to offer of a show scene here. Then sort of little drop in, which Gerstlauer tends to do. I got you. I'm not quite sure why it's not working today, but all right. All right, let's boost up to, get ourselves to 62. Always put a straight section or a couple after your launch track just to get the ride a little bit of time to get off of that launch before it actually goes anywhere. We can go ahead and select the Eurofighter train, which is one of Space K's ride vehicles. If you're doing this one, you'll note that we go down to one train and we actually have 3 cars there, which is not correct. You actually have to go in and turn off disable vehicle limits. And that way you can get to this one. So for whatever reason, that one will spawn 3 until get to there. Okay, so let's see how our speed's going. Keep in mind that with the small train here, you're going to need to watch out for the overall speed management of the ride, which this one doesn't have a huge track with it. But there's definitely some stuff to consider there. Remember, I always say in my preface for these is that we're not going to recreate the layout exactly. Because I'm also thinking of something like this. And up and over. Let's see how that performs. It might be a little bit too low, actually. Nope, actually, that would be just fine. And yeah, I think it is, Tresiah, is just the way the Zero car and a number of vehicles have invisible other cars. So that's what I'm assuming is to be part of the trouble there. Alright, so we'll do some kind of a turnaround. Maybe not necessarily the same thing as the real one does, although it is a nice looking, thing. It's, theirs comes, essentially come in, go up, and have like a dive down underneath and back up again, which we can certainly look at. That may not be a bad idea. Give it a try. Bank that transition just to smooth it a little bit. That kind of gets the same overall vibe of the thing. I almost like to get it through there, but I'm not quite certain that's the best way to go about it. Let's see, we're actually nearly out of speed there on that top section, which is important to keep an eye on. But we're nearly done with this section here. Okay, I'm gonna level this out, because one of the things that we still need to roll in if we're trying to match the real thing is, or at least inspired by the real thing, is a roll. Okay. So I'm doing the roll in this direction only because of the way that RCT does their pieces. I would prefer to have it come out of this corner here and just kind of continuously roll through that section. But because you have to unbank that turn and then roll into your inversion, I think it looks a little smoother in the game to go the other direction, just so you kind of get that little snappy transition into the other roll. So that would be my recommendation there if you're trying to do the same. Then we get our vertical lift hill here. Larger than it needs to be. And so what we can do is put a holding brake up here for a show scene. And now if we want, we can also go in here too and do the reverse merge for the beyond vertical track. I'm actually not going to do that here just because I think we need it right now. Back to the Giga. We'll do it on the next one for Takabisha, however. And just as a gut check, we're at 80 here, 150 up there, totally fine, plenty of room. I want to do something slightly more interesting than what was done on the real thing, but on the other hand, maybe not. And go through here and throw in our Brakes. I am going to have a little bit of flat section here, just like the real one's got. But that's kind of cool effect. What we could do, depending on how everything's feeling here, is this could roll right into a an inversion, which is a kind of a typical thing for a Eurofighter. Although with our next Eurofighter that we're going to do being very inversion heavy, we're going to go ahead and not, I think. Trying to get this to wrap up. Do that. Go this direction up. Hey, Red Play, we're working on something like Curse of Novgorod at Hansa Park. We are wrapping it up right now. This is a custom Eurofighter for that park. We're trying to do something similar to the real thing, not necessarily exact, but I don't think it's too far off. That's going to have a heck of a lot of speed there, but that's fine. Entrance, exit. Give it 4 trains to start. That's a block break there. And I'll extend this just a minute so that we can put a block break here, which will let us simulate a show scene. Okay. Let that do its thing while we go back through and drop in on the other track. The pacing is not too bad, just looking at that initially. I think, yeah, we'll need one more. There we go. We didn't go ahead and do the vertical drop on this one just because we're going to do it on the next one. I don't think it was quite as necessary, but certainly something you can add if you're interested. Okay, let's give this ride its signature forest green type color on everything. I like a little variety though. Do that. Okay, put it on our roll. All right. let's go ahead and do one little change here. We're going to designate this one Station 1. And we're going to designate this one Station 2 simply by the order that we're building it in. So that way, we'll actually get a ride starting in Station 1 here, which is what we want. Okay. Let's see how this performs. So we have our little show scene here. This would be that Little Pepper's Ghost effect or whatever that may be. Or a little steep dip here, which I do like. I do wish more of the rides had that. Appropriate for some situations like that. And this great airtime hill there. Curve. We did match the same sort of butterfly type turnaround that the real ones got. It doesn't actually look half bad in my opinion. Split apart and do a little bit of crossover. In my opinion, crossovers are always what kind of make those sorts of rides what they are. Is just make it interesting. All right, then that a red look. The only challenge I think we're about to run into now, let's see. That's got a heck of a finish there. It's fast. Yikes. Is this guy coming in? Is he going to clear this? Yeah, perfect. So what we were interested there is that this first train cleared the block over here by the time the second train got there. Part of the reason that happened is because we still left this flat piece of track here, so it's got to traverse that really slowly. If we didn't have that, this would need to be shorter, and kind of explains why the real ones got such a short secondary point, because you've got such a long time spent on this vertical lift that you're really kind of stuck with the whole thing. So now if you were doing this as, and let's go ahead and save this real quick, just to, that's if you're going to do some theming on this, the nice thing now is that you've got a long stretch here of interior space. And then you also have the top hat element here, and also, or the airtime hill, I guess, rather than top hat, and then the lift and drop right here. So this whole thing can be one little structure, and then you can really more or less just connect those two if it's intended to stay inside. So you've got a fairly efficient use of space for your building. When you do these kinds of show buildings for rides, you really want to make sure that everything's compact so that you're being efficient with your space. Buildings are expensive, so it would make sense to utilize things as best as possible. Yeah, I am actually pretty pleased with how the pacing turned out. I think it's okay. All right, so there is numero 2. We are cruising on through here as we're about to hit the first hour. So next up is Takabisha. I've got 3 Gerstlauers in a row here. But let's jump on back to the database. We will clear out this one. So this is Takabisha. This is currently one of the steepest coasters in the world, based on this right here, as you can see. It actually starts out with a launch into a pretty substantially large set of inversions, with a lift hill midway, another set of inversions, and then the brakes. There's quite a lot to this ride. I did ride this in Japan. It's a good looking coaster, and it actually rides surprisingly well despite the over-the-shoulder restraints that are typical for these Gerstlauer Eurofighters. So not my favorite usually. I would have much preferred a lap bar, but actually ran surprisingly well. They have since copied this coaster to a close degree at Nickelodeon Universe Park up in New Jersey, near New York City. So I haven't gotten a chance to go up and ride that one yet, but there is a version of this closer to home for a lot of folks. So let's take a ride on this. Yeah, it'd be fine V1 because the Cannibal at Lagoon's got a a lap bar and works just fine, even with the steepness of that drop. You do roll forward pretty well, but not that bad. So thanks to Our World's YouTube channel here for this one. Here's a roll right inside. It actually has a good little start, and then we have this nice little dip here to our covered launch. And now we get into these big inversions. So here's this giant corkscrew thing. And here's what's called the banana roll. It's like a Cobra Roll that doesn't fully get out from upside down. And we've got some rolls there. And now we're into this break, which is this is part of where I complain that a lift hill mid-ride kind of ruins the overall, everything of this, but just pacing in general, but it's all right. Mystery Mine could be a great ride if they got all the stuff working again and they got rid of the over the shoulders. I am hopeful. They were doing some track work this year. We'll see how it is. They're going to replace some stuff around the helix and then rebuild the trestle bridge. We'll see. Yeah, I agree, Intamin. We do want the larger corks. It's my number one request of track pieces. Number one. Yeah, it is kind of interesting ride play that they've managed to fit this size of a ride inside a building. I mean, it was custom built more or less to fit this ride, because there's a section of the building that extends up. You do have this little holding brake here on the incline, and then you can see the brakes here that kind of grab around the whole thing. It's a nice Fuji view, although if you warned, it's usually cloudy. It's sort of cloudy for our visit. Then we get this big dive loop. This sort of inverted top hat looking thing. And another dive loop. And into the brake. So 7 inversions in total. Well, Coasterpedia, I'm going to say is wrong, but that's fine. They can call it whatever they want to call it. Okay, so we can't do like half of these inversions in the game, so we're just going to have to wing it, I guess. Okay, so let's get our... Go ahead and do it in the Giga Coaster, and then we'll change. It's true, if they balanced it a little better. I'm sure most of it has to do with overall pacing of the ride, but, or like block pacing. Who knows? Well, credit to Coasterpedia for at least having a defined, definition of what they call it, because there's plenty of sites out there that just don't really even count it necessarily. And it is because it is. Okay, so we want some kind of a little pre-lift deal here. I think I'm going to go back to our vertical drop for this. All right. A lot of the Gerstlauers do have these little pre-lift sections, which I think are kind of interesting. Maybe a little bigger than we want. Really, it's just been Icebreaker and Mako. I didn't have as much of a hand in Mako as I did in Icebreaker. I've been more so focused on water rides over a couple years. Let's see, I'm not a fan of this. Let's rolling board here. Put in a double station just to be optimistic. I thought about doing a water ride stream at some point, although the problem is that some of them are just really messy hacks. So it's not so fun, in my opinion, for some of those just to do because it's just tedious. We're gonna do this one more time. Almost there. Roll, and then we'll bank one more time. Keep it compact like this. Here we go into the launch. See how fast this can actually get going. Because again, we're going to need that speed. Although, again, the nice thing is that the track length is actually not huge. Oh. It would help if we use the correct trains. Again, the Eurofighter trains. Although a zero G roll isn't a slow inversion. Now that's the difference. Zero G roll is a roll that produces zero Gs. You also have the slow rolls such as like this guy in here, which is not going to do that, which is more of a barrel roll. I don't like the hang time on those. I prefer the bigger kind of stuff. Hey Hydro, welcome in. Good to have you here. All right, so we are going to start with our big stuff here. This one's Takabisha, but yeah. Same difference. Get our... Wow, I made it all the way back to the station. Nice. I really should just build this whole thing in B&M, but I also want to get the inversion or the launch acceleration out of the Giga, which is why I wish we could just keep the same acceleration for every ride and just change a value which increases the acceleration, but whatever. Ooh. That's too much. Wow. Out of curiosity, what was that doing? Let's see. All right, 50, 60, 70, 80, 87. Wow. That's a bit much. Let's bring it down. So perhaps rather than 98, we're gonna stick with like 70 something. The real one is 62, which is honestly slower than I would have expected. Feels faster. We're gonna do 72 just because I'm not quite convinced that right there is where we hit full speed. Yeah, I wish we could change the acceleration like with lift hills. That's kind of where I would prefer to see everything go. Pause that real quickly so we can. I want to get this built and make sure it's going to not be too hilariously fast over this. Okay, perfect. Actually works really well. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and do a traditional Cobra Roll. Back to Giga. Alright, that's not too bad. A little fast, but not awful. We'd probably even go back in and add a little bit if we wanted to. Go ahead and do this. Oops. And oops again. Corkscrew in there. Half loop. Go, okay. Now we want here. Got our big inversion. We've got now there's another corkscrew on the thing, which we can't really do, so we can just say we'll do like a not inverting loops of some kind. Figure out the best way to do that. We could actually just do a regular loop, which may not be a bad idea right here. Especially kind of how it sits underneath of that inversion. Okay. Wouldn't mind having that over just one little bit, so instead of the large half loop, we're going to use the quarter. Oh wait, so it's a little more out where we want it. And we have prime real estate here afterwards for a loop threading event of some kind, whatever that may be. And what do we want to do? We've got the corkscrew, and probably want to do some kind of a turn element of sorts. Go back to our Giga real quick. I'm trying to keep this in a relatively compact zone here. Okay. So this will be where we get our brake set up. Block brake in there. Let me see what that puts us in line for. That puts us in line to get a 0. Okay, that's just fine actually. Back to that vertical drop coaster. Missed putting the chain lift on. It's down here. Yeah, you hold control. And then it's however large your land tile area is. So if you have like a 20 by 20, it'll give you a 1 by 20, which will let you set it up like that. It was something new that I had learned. I didn't actually know that was a thing until pretty recently, actually. Okay. We're a good deal higher than everything. And typically we would actually have some breaks here just based on all of this. But since I don't really want to shoestring that, we'll just end up having to do something that looks a little awkward. I don't know why it doesn't have anything else in it. It is sort of an awkward look. For whatever reason, I always have trouble getting this to work whenever I do this hack. I think I'm off by 1. What I might just go ahead and do is just not. Then we'll kind of ignore that one for now. We can always throw it in at a later time. Do you have a Gerstlauer fighter with 2 launches instead of a combination? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's trying to think. So Infinity Coaster is have. I mean, you look at something like Smiler, that's got 2 lift hills. There's no reason why you could not have two launches. Absolutely. Okay, the nice thing here is that we got the interaction that we wanted with this section here. Let's drop. Okay, 95 feet. Ooh, hear that thunder outside. Warming today. Okay. Kind of want to do with this one is set it up like an airtime hill, then give it a twenty-one inversions. Woo! Boy, that's what's up there. I think the most I've ever seen advertised on a real coaster was 15. You're pushing the limit there a little bit, I think, but always interesting to see. You know, for all the streams that we've done, I've never actually done a Smiler. That may be one of those for a future stream. All right, so we've got our dive loop there, and then into thinking that could be interesting. That could be very interesting. Okay, then we'll be right on top of it. We're gonna be right on top of it. Okay. $120 is too tall. The launch is just not shooting as strong, Hydro, because I've got it in Twister to build all the inversions. Annoyingly, the launch acceleration varies based on which ride you've got selected. So as soon as we change this over to Giga Coaster, it's going to do just fine. As we will see here, because I do want to see what it hits this dive loop with. We've got 6 miles per hour on our lift hill. It would be neat to be able to have variable speed lift hills on your ride, so you start it slow and then pick up the speed as it gets further up, so just kind of simulate the speed of the lift hill changing over time. I think that would be kind of a neat addition to the game at some point. Ooh, needs those brakes. Definitely needs those brakes. Hey, we would have a brake there. We'd probably shoestring that, perhaps. Okay, it's quick, but not too bad. Okay, let's go back to Twister Coaster here and figure out what we want to do. I don't really want this to be taller than this inversion here. But I'm pretty much already there. I'll make this just a little bit taller. on this side. And then I'm just going to do 2 back-to-back dive loops. For some reason. Alright. Loop. There we go. Strange. 2 Cobra Rolls on one. That would be funny. A batwing wouldn't be out of the question, but it's really hard to build batwings at medium size. You can build like a super large one, and you can build a small one. But to build ones that are actually that fit well in like this size inversion, it just doesn't look good. Okay. So I think we'll just try and end it right here. I was going to thread the loop, but I'm not quite sure that's going to work out today. But what I will do is set this up to have shoot. I want it to kind of come alongside here, but we have a clearance issue. I think one more should take care of that. Not sure that we can't do anything else. Nah, does not want to cooperate today. Let's try this then. Ooh, almost. Almost. Ooh, that's some thunder. I don't know if you heard that one, but some good storms today. That would be a yikes. I haven't had a good storm for a little while, so apologies for that one. Yeah, it's a nice little thunderstorm outside today. Starting a string of a lot of days of rain here, it sounds like. Okay, so what do we have? We have 1 inversion, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, why don't we throw in number 8? We will go ahead and break Takabisha's number there. Go ahead and put breaks here. And then let's go ahead and bring this down. I'll put 1 here. All right. So now before we do any of this, unfortunately, we got to go back and like rebuild the whole thing with the B&M track. Let's do that quickly. See how fast we can do it almost. Table. Okay. A little while since I built one with this many inversions because you don't typically see huge inversion rides. Okay. There's our first section. We're going to go ahead and paint black. We'll do our Takabisha colors. Okay, section 2. Here. Not have the straight section. For whatever reason, I always get my directions wrong on that. Like, it feels like literally every time I build one of a corkscrew or big half loops, I always get the direction wrong. I don't know what it is, but not want to cooperate sometimes. Forget our roll here. Okay, up and over, get rid of these guys. These guys. We can still hold out hope that one day X7 will release his Intamin track at some point. And then this will all be for naught. Okay, last one was here. I don't remember which way it rolled, so we're just going to pick that one, see if I'm right. Okay, black, black, gray. Okay. Now, finally, let's get ourselves block section mode. Let's get 4 trains on this bad boy and go. Okay. Get our first big launch right there. Giant Cobra Roll. Big loop. Nice hang time there in that loop. A fast corner section right here. Now we'll clear that Sun Train 2 out, so I'm curious to see here. Based on the speed of this, we're going to be just fine. We'll slow that down, though. We've got big dive loop right there. I'm going to roll the other way. I was wrong. Right on that one, at least. Okay. Let's fix these. Okay, so now with the slower lift hill, let's see what this one's going to do. Because ideally we want this to be relatively lined up so that when our train coming off of the lift hill hits the final brakes, the next one is about to pull into the blocks there. But I think we're a little bit off from that. Not horribly so, but not best either. If we dropped out of the station right away and we didn't have this slow bit, I think we'd be all right, but that's fine. All right, so there's number 3. That one took longer than anticipated. Okay, so let's jump ahead here and get to Firechaser Express. All right, so Firechaser Express is a gorgeous family Gerstlauer coaster at Dollywood in Tennessee. It has 2 launches, actually. It has a slow launch out of the station, and then a lift hill, which you can see there in the center of the image, and then a pretty decent little layout with a show scene in the middle and a backwards launch across the switch track that ends up leading into the final brakes backwards, and the station itself is on a spur here, and you can actually see the one train coming out with the other train here waiting to back in. So kind of a unique situation as far as that goes. One of the very few ones like this, and for probably good reason. It's not exactly great for capacity, but it's a fun ride, super fun ride. So there's actually 3 that are like this. So we've got this guy, this Firechaser Express, which was the first. And then after this, we have the Pegasus Express at Park Asterix, which is a little bit faster and does a little bit more stuff. Also a good ride. Has a little push out of the station, a lift hill, and then a backwards launch again. Here's the show scene before you go backwards. And then the final one of these that's kind of forgotten is B in Parque del Cafe in Colombia, South America. You can kind of see the Firechaser influence here. You can see the little section of boost out of the station there. The curve, the lift hill, and then the nice little windy course down the mountainside. And you can see in this shot too, there's some water elements there at the end, which is kind of cool. So, kind of nice. Let's take a ride on Firechaser just because I think it's a nice ride. All right. Ooh, who's hungry? Yep. Okay. So here you can see that track switch right in front of you, which is kind of a pretty unique thing. So a little boost here. Figure 8 of sorts. And now we get to the actual lift hill portion. Chain lift. For a family coaster, this is actually a pretty aggressive ride. It has a 39-inch rider height requirement, which is really small, really small, some of the smallest in the industry. But the ride itself is reasonably aggressive, and it's got some pretty interesting elements in there too, as you'll see here. So we got this kind of nice banked turn coming out, and then we come up to this flat corner here, kind of odd, with a little drop here into this one that almost just falls out of the sky. The big drop right here, a little airtime hill, bigger airtime hill. Here's some mid-course brakes. Then I love this section here. So heading on down into this bit right here where it's got little right hand, then left hand, then right hand corner. I love those little slalom type right, left, right type corners. The maintenance bay is actually straight ahead, which is a pretty clever use of maintenance bay. Also not near the station, so it's kind of nice to be able to keep it out towards the back and hidden well. Now there's a show scene going on, which you can't see on the side. You're in a fireworks warehouse, and there's a fire. So we get blown backwards over that switch. Then you get this nice big drop backwards. Helix, couple of hills, and then come and sit in the brakes. So not too bad. And then if we actually zoom forward a little bit here, we can see we're coming backwards into the station at the end. So this, in my opinion, and Intamin, I would totally agree with you, is one of the best family coasters around. So let's see what we can do with that. Now, the challenge for us is that we can't easily build ourselves a backwards launch. It's possible, you can do it, but in the instance of what we're doing here, we cannot. There's a couple of different ways that we can do it if we want to go that way. So I'm not quite sure if we want to do that yet, so let's decide that in a little bit. Yeah, the only thing that I would change would be the backing into the station. I get where they went, actually, from a theming standpoint. Sure, it makes plenty of sense. Fire station, but I don't think it was maybe the right move. Okay, so Firechaser has an 7-car train, and I'm going to use Space K's new streamlined trains. These guys. The only reason I'm going to use these is because they have the articulated single seat. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I mean, we can certainly look in that direction. It's one of those things that I've done before, but it's also been somewhat annoying, complicated hacking. And I'm sure there are better ways to do it that I don't, I mean, like what you're suggesting. I just don't really want to do it. Alright, so here's our first little beginning bit. Let's off of the station into or off of the lift hill into a bit of a hill here. without scenery to work with, we can kind of work ourselves around the coaster, or we can do some other little bits and pieces here. Kind of inclined to try and work around the coaster itself. Actually, what we can do out of this. Ends up quite nicely, actually. And then we'll turn this here and give ourselves a brake run. See how it hits that brake run. It might be a little bit too slow. Not bad. I would say I can probably pull off one of the pieces of brakes there, because we'll consider that curve as one of the evac points. A couple of little hills here. Fortunately, run right into ourselves at that location. Gonna hit the lift hill there. Mostly just trying to get something that's going to riff off of some of the areas that we've already completed. I do wish that all the coasters had that banked to flat diving corner thing, because I would use it in this instance, I think. Give ourselves a little airtime hill here. Firechaser is one that uses terrain pretty well, so the fact that we're not using it here is a little, disappointing. But the way that I'm building this is it's kind of set so that nothing over here touches the ground, so you could easily drop this up on a mountain if you wanted to. See how this runs across here. A nice easy element, nothing too snappy. But now, in lieu of doing the backwards launch, I think we're just going to have a rolling second launch. Need to work our way around to it. I try and avoid this curve here, and the reason that I've been hesitant to do this left-hand curve here is because I've got a left-hand curve here, a straight section, another left-hand curve, and then a straight section. So I want to keep my corner balance a little more even, which is why I'm hesitant to do that sort of a thing. But we could do this. Go ahead and get a little bit more speed out of this. Not a whole lot. Give ourselves one more big drop here. And just to kind of reinforce what we're doing. The intention would be that some of this stuff is pretty high up. And this is how I do a lot of my terrain coasters, is just you get this general massing, and once you finish with the massing of the overall elements, then you can get in there and smooth it so it doesn't look totally forced or doesn't look like just isn't going to fit for whatever reason. I can't quite get through there. Hoped we might be able to. Probably do this. Is really all we need just to get that little bit of interaction in there. That can get us to the end. Maybe. Maybe not. Let's see, 30, 30. We don't want to get too long. You remember with the Firechaser video, it was really just a, once you had the backwards launch, it was a big drop, then it was a like 270-degree helix, and then it was another big drop, a couple of corners, and that was it. So we've got kind of what we would consider the big drop here. We've got our helix, and then we have a couple of more corners, and we probably ought to be done. Again, that comes down to mostly just overall pacing of the block sections. Just trying to sort out what that final answer is here for this ride. I'm not too displeased with it, Hydra. I think it's working all right. Get rid of this. All that, a brake run. Or maybe not. It's okay to be a little indecisive here. Block brakes, brake. Put in our blocks. This covered. I need to get to 25, which is fine because I can just do a larger helix here at the end. Do that 25. No brakes there. I'm guessing this is going to be enough for a third train. Now I'm going to put brakes here, but I'm going to leave them wide open. Have that for the aesthetic purposes. We'll see if we need a block brake there. We can always put a dummy block if we need to. Gerstlauer does love their dark green boosters. So really what I'm trying to do with this kind of a layout, especially when I have a little bit of terrain, I don't really have theming at this point, is get in here and do a lot of interaction and work around the coaster itself, so getting some parallels here and there and fitting it in as far as that goes. All right, so this will be really interesting. I think we're going to run out of room here with the second train coming, just based on how much we have left for the next one to go, but let's have a look. We might get lucky. Probably won't. Definitely won't. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds of trouble there before we get clear. Let's see what it looks like if we drop a block break in here. If it really screws with our overall speed. I think it will, but we can see. I do think Gerstlauer is one of the best as far as family coasters go. They really do pretty spectacular designs, and I was a huge fan of this one. I was a huge fan of Pegasus Express. I want to get down to Colombia to do the other one. They're fun rides. All right, so let's see what this does for us as far as block goes. That didn't actually slow it down too badly. Now the question is, are we going to get home before this one gets to the launch, which we will. Yeah, dude, you're right, and I do love some of the larger ones. I mean, their infinity coasters with the lap bars are pretty strong. I think the U.S. had some of the Eurofighters, which were maybe less good or didn't age as well, like Mystery Mine, or more recently like Hang Time over at Knott's, which I can't say I've ever heard an enthusiast say something nice about that ride. So I haven't been over to ride it myself, unfortunately, so I don't quite know, but it just seems a little bit disappointing as far as that goes. Actually, get kind of a nice little pass right there. Granted, they're at totally different levels, but it is kind of neat to see all three coasters moving at the same time. I've heard that Hang Time doesn't ride very well, and granted, that's could be just enthusiasts being enthusiasts and complaining about whatever, but hard to say. We don't have our forwards or our backward section here, but at least we have the rest of it, which I think actually works pretty well here. This seriously only 4? Wow. We are behind today. All right, so let's clear this one off, and let's get on to the next one here. Last one before our break time. So this is Dragon King. This is an Intamin inverted coaster, family inverted coaster, which is one that I think a lot of people forget about, to be honest. But I think that's fair, just because it's not exactly a record-breaking or whatever is going on here. So there's a little launch just outside the station, which is what counts it for this one. And then the lift hill leading into the overall ride itself. So let's hop on. Let's go ahead and try Coaster Club Day. So here's our little launch here. Gives us a little push up and then into this lower portion. Tire drive lift hill. Tire drives are typically cheaper than a chain lift and lower maintenance. For a family coaster, it's a pretty substantial lift hill, and my guess as to why we've only seen the one of the Intamins is just the Intamins tend to have a lot more costs associated with them as far as just some of these beefier supports go and the track and everything else. A nice tunnel there. No inversions on the ride, although there are a lot of nice little snappy corners and some airtime hills, which is something that you don't see very often on an inverted coaster. Like right back here, I love this little dip behind the station. And up and over. Then wrap around and one more helix here before we hit our brakes. Here into the brakes. So pretty cool ride. Definitely a family ride, definitely family oriented, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Certainly, it's what they're going for. And there we have it. Okay, so we are going to jump back into the game and see what we can do with this. Just based on lack of inverted options to use, we're going to use the B&M. And because it doesn't have a booster element, we're going to go ahead and use the station launch element or mode just to give us a little bit of that boost here at the beginning. There are 7 cars on the train. We're going to use the compact inverted just because, again, lack of options. Start with that. There are pretty much a dearth of good inverted train options, mostly because of the challenges that they are to build. Powered launch without passing station. A little bit of an odd bit here with this element, but I kind of like it. It's just it's a unique little design. Yeah, you can definitely put the Intamin track on top of it. It's just it can be done. It's just often ends up looking really messy. I know Prodigy did this a couple of times in some older parks, and I didn't hate it, but I also didn't really love it either. Although I was a big fan of his work. Alright, and then that'll get us up to our lift hill. Okay, we want a... figure out what this launch wants to be. That 24 miles per hour seems alright so far. The other challenge that we have with these trains is that they don't bank, so we're going to have to just kind of deal with the lack of that. Okay. We will do a little bit of a steep first drop here. No, they use the... I mean, they bank for the flat turns, but not for the inclined ones. Slightly annoying, I would say. Yeah, that would be another wonderful thing if somebody can eventually get get a good inverted train model put together. Be really great to have that kind of a thing. Okay. We'll do a dive down here underground since we didn't do that at the start. I'm counting this little boost at the very beginning as a launch. It's certainly stretching the definition of what you consider a launch, perhaps. but I do think it's, you know, enough of a boost that I worth noting. I think I've said a lot of times, a lot of what I pick for these things are just rides that I don't see very often on, you know, people building or on the internet or whatever. So I just want to feature it, and that's about it. Q Dude will agree with you as far as the merit of this being a proper inverted coaster is. Hey, you wanted to make your argument. You can have your argument if you want. There's a lot of ones that could be questionable for this. I considered doing Hulk or as part of this one because it really is a lift followed by a launch. In the end, I didn't just because I'm kind of saving that for another thing. Especially when you get into these kiddie coasters, these are kind of a pain just to make fit with the 3 height clearances and everything. Yep, Big Grizzly's another one. That's was also as one of the ones that I have listed here as bonus. It's Coaster Stream. I do have Wild Mouse Stream at some point. I don't know if that Shift Wild Mouse guy is going to be back anytime soon, but if he is, I got him covered. Alright, so we wanted to do one Japanese wild mouse and the non-wild mouse layout. You're going to have to be more specific. There's a lot of those. A lot of stuff I'd build at the park, given unlimited budget. I might do a preferences stream at some point, like just things that I like. I actually did that one, the diving coaster at MeWorld. I did that for something, and I'm trying to remember when I did it, but I'm a fan of that one. That's one of the weirder ones, and further disappointed that it doesn't exist anymore. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. No, I never got a chance to ride it. That closed a good while ago. One of those that had a pretty just interesting overall just aesthetic and design, and it's one of those that I couldn't really believe it was a Zamperla initially, and sure enough it is. We'll get that dip behind the station. Almost wonder if it needs to go the other way. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I don't want to go the other way. These are interesting to build just because there's so few inverted coasters out there that do this kind of stuff. So it's a really oddball mixture of trying to figure out what the ride could do or might do or could end up looking like. I could always do like I mean, I'm always looking for new stream suggestions, so um, there's other themes that you guys would like to see. I'm all ears. But I always like the idea of like favorites or the one that a lot of people seem to like was the weird coaster stream, which I do have enough things set up for that to do another one. And I could do flat up. There we go, much better. Never did old coasters. I did a wooden coaster stream early on. It was like one of the earliest. Well, actually, not one of the earliest. I did modern wooden coasters right away, but it was one that was talking about old wooden coasters. But I haven't necessarily done old like rides not made anymore. I've done like older. I don't know. It'll be interesting. Failed experiments would be interesting. The only challenge that you run into there is just getting things that exist in the game well enough to be able to make it. But I see what you mean about like Son of Beast and things like that. Because what would come to my head right away would be something like Vertigo at Walibi, Belgium, or which we've already done. But there's plenty of other ones of those that didn't quite make it as far as just theme or ride goes. All right. Probably too much, actually. The end. This down. Indoor coasters may not be a bad idea. Like a yeah, that could be kind of fun. There's a pretty good variety of stuff. There's a pretty good variety of just stuff that you could do for that. Because I figure if you do something like that, you'd end up having. Well, let's think about it. We would have the all the stuff at Nickelodeon, any of the Nickelodeon Universe parks that we could do. So we probably do that big Mindbender coaster. Although I do want to do traveling coasters at some point, which would be something similar to that. Then we could do a certainly Supersonic Odyssey would be there on my list because that one's such an interesting coaster. in your head there's a difference between indoor and enclosed coasters. I do not necessarily bring a difference between them. Because I would also consider some things that start inside but also have an outside component as acceptable. But it all kind of depends on what you're going for with it. Alright, nope, we don't need 3 trains. Just 2. Just 2. Yeah, the Kuwait one would be kind of interesting. That dueling coaster stream, that would be the longest stream ever. I do not want to deal with that. Our powered launch block section, 24 miles per hour. Let's stick with this. Could do that. Vertical drops. Do, and you know, I still have the want to do things like go through B&M's catalog or whatever other ones like that. All right, let's give ourselves a paint job on this. What would you suggest for a new coaster type stream? So that's an interesting thought. Depends on what the thing is. Clones could be fun, although then you're doing full recreations of things. But I don't necessarily mind that. Okay, so here's our layout for the Dragon King. We have our little boost here at the beginning, leading into our lift hill, and then a nice little steep drop, and a couple of corners, just trying to alternate the direction of corners. A couple of little more airtime hills than you would see on a typical invert, but and taking it pretty easy as far as speed goes, but turned out relatively nicely, I think. All right, so that's number 5. And as I said, we're running a little bit behind right now, but let's look at our final 4 here, which will be the Gekion Live Coaster, Maverick Atlantis Adventure, and then wrapping up with Inferno or Dark Mare. Although we'll have to infer a little bit there, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So until then, now we get to the weird one of the stream. So this is Gekion Live Coaster, also known as Veil of Dark. When I wrote it, it was Veil of Dark. So the where check that out right here. So Veil of Dark is, or Gekion Live as it is right now, kind of checks all the boxes as far as coaster things go. So it's got a lift hill, it's got a launch, it's got a spinning train on it, it has an inversion, it is indoors, it has a shooting interactive component to it, all in one coaster or one ride. So it's pretty good. Intamin, which one is that link? Is that the Attractions Magazine one? Because that's the one that I was gonna pull up. So right now, it started when I wrote it as Veil of Dark. It was a horror themed coaster, but it is since been changed to a rhythm game that, sure, I guess makes sense. It's a little bit of an odd one there, I guess. But let's take a look and see. So official Joypolis channel. All right. See what we've got here. Oh, look at that. this one's actually a pretty good view because this. But one of the cool things with this is that the screen actually moves back, so this like moves alongside the coaster. So it's an interesting thing. This is sped up, of course, right here. So you'll see the lift hill, full of these elements here, and then we get onto our launch. We got this launch here into an inline twist inversion, which you also take spinning. And then this figure 8 type finale. It's actually a really good POV. It's much better than the one that I had pulled up. And that's the ride. So that's it. There's really not a whole lot to it, just overall. But it's a pretty cool looking coaster and does some unique things. The scoring is interesting, and the whole thing with the screens that move, alongside you is pretty interesting. But this will end up being a pretty small coaster for us. You're welcome. It did cross my mind that I should maybe not blindly trust your links, but I know where I know where your profile is on New Element, so it's a very difficult type coaster to put together. I don't know how this one's a stretch. It's got a lift hill and it's got a launch. This is much less of a stretch than the inverted coaster was. It lifts. It's a lift hill. I don't really know how to what difference it would be with the thing, but it does what it is meant to do. It is true. All right, so we'll do a little like boost thing here, I guess. So yeah, Gerstlauer does some pretty interesting stuff. I was going to talk about Backdon, but that only has launches rather than lifts. But it is a super fascinating coaster. Okay. Trying to mostly keep it in this same area. And this may be one of those instances again where we can go to the vertical drop coaster for some useful elements. The right one. This and that. That's the one that I was just talking about, Intamin, the Backdon. It is it's really interesting, actually. Just it's one of the Gerstlauer does these really cool just programming things, and that's one of them that I think is just super interesting. It does the it takes the entire layout forwards, pulls into the station facing the other direction, then takes the entire layout backwards and then backs into the station again. It's such a cool concept, and I really, really like it. I hope to do it at some point here. All right, so let's get our booster here. Give it not much that doesn't take much to get this boosted. 23 miles an hour is the overall speed. See, I didn't get much out of the spinning, to be honest, on this one. Bless you, my wife. if you heard that. But I didn't get much out of the spinning on this one. Like, it always kind of did the same kind of spin on the inversion. So it was one of those where it was like, okay, it's fine, but let's put our roll right here. Limb launched. And then the big thing you have to think about for this one is that it's indoors in basically a big arcade. So the key thing for this is trying to make it as compact as it can be, because it's got to fit within all sorts of other stuff. We'll do a little dip here, back up, and then that lets us do more. Or actually, I can do right here. Get our block breaks in. What am I hitting? Okay, so we're at 5 right now. Can't really get up any farther. Okay. Yeah, that is another one that I forget about a lot too, the Madagascar Ride. It actually looks like a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and put in a second unload station just to have it. Yeah. Helix, helix. We can just go up then. I actually don't mind that. That will be a slow roll to the end, I think, but we can actually do this, just get a little bit more spinning out of it. That's backward. Exit entrance. Now I want the Mach Extreme Spinning Coaster cars, because that's probably the closest thing we're going to get for this. I hear a lot of good stuff about that one. That's probably a little bit fast through those areas. Not quite. A little bit slow. A little bit slow. Out of curiosity, let's see what the rest of this is going to do. Alright, so what we need to do then is let's actually build up this launch since it's so slow we're going to see it. Yeah, I'll see what they are. Keep this moving through the little area here. Give that a try. That would seem like a poor design if they would have to stop the skylift for the trains. It's a like a miss as far as the design goes. Okay, so that's not too bad. I don't actually mind the hold there as it currently stands. If this one can get clear quickly enough, which it can. Like I don't mind at all having the little hold at the launch. Just because it feels like that could be a nice show scene pause. It runs this actually pretty well. I bet we could get a sixth one in here. But let's. Here's your stats: low, medium, low. So this is a perfect candidate for editing stats, I would say. And that's the thing, is it you want to be as useful as far as indoor space as you can. So this is a good one for that. Where's my limb? There's my limb. I want to do left twist. Oh shoot. Went the wrong way. So now I need to put this one into limb. Close this up, rebuild. Left, left. Left. Okay. Turn this back to mini coaster. Get that under test again. Black, black, black. Well, you could probably do something kind of neat with the overall design of this. If you really wanted to. Just because this would be like the one portion that would stick out within the overall space. Put it in your maw, Hydro. All for you. There we go, easy enough, and you can do some screens. Run 6 trains very nicely, I would say. Alright, so there we go, that's number 6. And then just for clarification for anybody who downloads this thing, this is your show box 1. This is your show box 2. There you go. Wow, that would be an interesting thing. So, for the future YouTube viewers, Intamin says, winning hack idea, make these 2-car trains and then have the vehicle for the first car be the screens, with the screens visible only having sprites for, or screen vehicles only having sprites for level straight track. Wow, that would be really cool. That would be a clever idea. All right. So now we get to 2 that I've actually recently done on streams. So I'm not going to spend maybe quite as much time on these just because we've already done it. But Maverick, so probably the most well-known of the coasters that we're looking at today with lift and launch. Now the designation of the lift as a lift is perhaps questionable, just because it is LSM powered and not like a chain lift or tire, but it is a consistent speed, even if it is fast, with a actual launch down below. Just because, let's go ahead and watch the original Cedar Point POV. I picked the reverse POV, so that's not what we want. We want this one. Video quality has come quite a ways. So here you go. I will consider this a lift hill because it is consistent speed, even though it is a quick lift. So we've got our beyond vertical drop here, 95 degrees. Fast corners. Very snappy transitions. Good airtime hill right here. Wrapping around to what they call the twisted horseshoe roll, but that's really just 2 corkscrews and a turn. Turns out you can make up your own inversion names no matter what you're doing. Okay, here's when it used to have theming inside. And then we had this great launch. This corner up hit some of those mag brakes right there. There used to be a roll right here, not anymore. Never opened with it. Stingle dive underneath of the drop. Another one there. A little airtime hill here, and then up into the brakes. I just assume with the theming that things broke over time and just or interfered with the ride control system, or just were causing faults, things like that, and then just weren't bothered to be replaced. That's usually how a lot of rides go that have theming and then end up getting removed or something. But anyway, let us jump back to the game. And let's see what we're going to do. The cool thing with Maverick is that it self-duels, so you've got this, you got the second, if the cars are dispatched properly, you will get a duel with the second part of the ride running alongside the first, which I think is very cool. Okay. First bit is we got a block brake here. Okay, so for this one, we're actually going to use the launch lift hill. I feel like you can make it the most consistent. No, I think I did 2 streams ago, maybe. One. So it's and the same thing with the Atlantis Adventure Aquatrax, which is next. I could see it going under failed prototypes. I mean, certainly the roll was something that didn't quite hit. Not that it wasn't possible to be ridden, but I think there was a determination from the park that they thought it was a little bit too intense, so they decided to go against it and replace it. All right, let's see how we do as far as just overall. I did do one and done. That was one of the options that I had done a little while ago. I don't know how long ago that was. Okay, so every 3 may be a little bit too slow. Let's try every other. All right. I am using 4 car trains on this one just so I can get a little bit more consistency with speed management. There we go. That hits where we want. I do like Maverick's cornering, but I miss a little bit of airtime that I feel like the ride could have had. Thankfully, they've since done away with the terrible original Intamin over the shoulders and have gone with the much more easily rideable soft vests. Here, how's this? Better? We're gonna hit that no matter which way we go. Let's see how holds up. What we also have here is launch track number 2. Go ahead and place now. The Intamin really got away with that whole first drop with a pretty sizable turn right after it. I think they did well to do so. Alright, I am going to go ahead and use the 67 mph launch here. Okay. And the question is, can we get this where we can get a face-off duel right here, which would be pretty cool. Really, the biggest tech difference is just that the launches have gotten more efficient. This was one of the earlier LSM type launches, which was the natural move from limb launches, which were easier to do, but also less efficient and used a lot more power. The LSM launches like this one ended up having a lot of, or became a lot more efficient and take a lot less power to use. So there's not actually a whole huge amount of difference between where they were and where they are now. It's just that the costs of the equipment have gone down, and it's just become easier over time to really develop out these overall things. Trackless coasters, not anytime soon. Nice trackless dark ride. All right. Okay, so we'll pass there, and then theoretically these could pass again. Winnie the Pooh's extreme shackles. That looks like a great, as far as trackless dark rides go, that looks like one of the better ones. Bobsled would be great. The challenge with bobsled is that they're just really expensive, since the whole thing is rolled tube that's welded in a bunch of places on a bunch of just angle or like hoop brackets. So the problem is with that one is I don't think we're going to see any of those anytime soon, sadly. Okay. What I don't have so far is inversions. So go ahead and set up our brake run also. These water slides or bobsled track. I mean, the thing is, the Intamin one, it more or less is the same sort of deal. It's just water slide track is fiberglass, and you're not going to run a heavy coaster over top of it. My personal favorite inversion, zero G roll. Zero G rolls are always one of those things for me that just is. I like my airtime, so zero G in an airtime, I'll take it. Okay. Drop down on this side. Right back up again. Hey, that would be an interesting stream to do. Is the marketing BS stream. So do Mindbender with the third loop. You do You do Pepsi Max big one that travels 100 miles an hour. That could be fun. Was gonna fit. Norwegian Loop is a good. I always like those too. Fahrenheit was one of those rides that I expected that we would see more of, but I mean, granted, they are building a couple in China right now, but I expected there to be more quickly, I suppose. Yeah, it's there is a vertical lift on it. It's got a I forget what the name is. I'll send it to you after the stream. I can look it up and remember what it is, what it was called. Yeah, I didn't expect a second extreme spinner so fast. I kind of thought somebody would buy one of their example models, the little compact one. I was a little surprised at that for sure. Okay. See how this goes, and then see how we can interact with it. I figured the double roll could be interesting, and then maybe we'll put a corkscrew at the end of the second one. A little fast, I would say. Now, granted, we're going to have it slow down here. Hit the brakes back here, and then we'll give plenty of time for others to catch up. And let me just back up out of this. So we'll say block brake here, then we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, just to get that whole train on there. Call this the end of the line. Let me see what 4 trains. Okay. It's very true, and it's interesting to me that it's one of the very few coasters that we have, which is lift, or in this stream today, that's lift and then launch. All right, let me see where I'm at. Doing this just as a check to see where we are. But it's interesting to me because I would always think you would want to do it this way, like 100% of the time. Is you start with the lift hill and then you have the launch midway, and then it works just overall. That's actually been Kudu fixing the standard RCT coasters, and then while keeping them recognizable, making them more realistic or more, flowing. Something that a bunch of the folks on New Element were doing for a little while on the Discord channel there. It was actually pretty interesting seeing what the thoughts were. Okay, we are way too far in front. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or at least 7 in front, which is not okay. That's not gonna do it. Okay. So let's okay, so we want the block break to be kind of almost back here. Okay, let's see what that does. This is almost how you do dueling coasters too, which is why I don't think I'll ever do a stream for dueling coasters, just because it takes so long to balance and figure out. And granted, I'm not paying a whole lot of attention to this. This is just something that I'm putting together as I'm kind of throwing it together here. Just something to think about. That looks cool, at least. And I have they both hit this corner at the same time. Granted, the corner is nowhere close to the other one, but it does look nice. I do kind of like that element, though. I don't quite want to get rid of it. It is interesting, some of those original RCT posters, kind of how iconic they are for all of us, at least recognizable, and everything like that is just, some of them are just absolutely terrible. Although not, I would say not as bad as some of like the expansion pack rides that were kind of in some of the scenarios. Like those were just awful. But it is interesting to me that there's so much um, that we recognize some of those a lot. I mean, there's some that I just remember from RCT 1, even though I haven't played that game in ages. At 40 here. One's not coming as easily, which is a little disappointing. But that said, these don't always go so easily. Dueling coasters, as I would almost consider this one a dueling coaster, does not necessarily mean that it's going to come with right out of the gates. Be a little bit too fast here to do corkscrews. Yeah, some of those are not great. I kind of wonder what kind of went into some of them, and you're just like, why? I think I just kind of want to finish this, and then move on to the next thing. Yeah, they definitely went a little bit loop happy, I think, on some of those. Some of those. There's a little much. One, two, three, four, five. Okay, that's new school Intamin on an old school Intamin. That's not a good design. Yeah, the sizing was a little bit interesting. The other one that I always thought was strange was the loop on the vertical drop coaster. Because one didn't exist, not until Yukon Striker. Alright, so let's see how the whole thing goes. It's only gonna cross here. Oof. That would be a little bit much. Have that. Alright, we'll call that a day. I'm not happy with it, but we spent a long time screwing around with that in order to get it to something feasible. Okay, next up is Maverick Atlantis Adventure. This one we just did. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? We just did this one really recently. So we'll look at it again. Why not? But this is a Aquatrax, an Intamin Aquatrax. It's the only one which starts out with a launch and has a lift hill midway through. I think it only has boats because of the theming queue, dude. It doesn't. It has the water splash elements down there, and you can definitely get pretty close to the water. And I'm sure you can probably get the guests a little bit wet depending on your water elevation. But for the most part, it's really just theming, I would say. And the theming inside is beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. There. We had watched an on-ride video last time because there's a top hat inside the building, and then it kind of wraps around the backside. The big thing for me for this one is just the overall location of where pieces are in relation to each other. So let's kind of look at it from here, which is a worse camera angle than I thought it was going to be. You can kind of see where the launch track is out here, parallel to the lift hill track and our drop. The lift hill track is the innermost one. So this is the lift hill. Here's our turn. Here's our drop. You can see the launch track next to that. Here's the station. Brake run out. This is the brake run here. And then we have the other element that kind of wraps around the launch out here. So it's all sort of in line, which is one of the key things that I had missed the last time when I tried this. So let's see if we can do better than the last time. That was one that I was not happy with. And see where it can come out. Because what I'm going to do first is build in this lift hill. Probably not. They may have been a little bit, but I'd be more surprised to see that than other things. And that's too tall. That's way too tall. It's interesting how old Atlantis Adventure is now. 2003. And still, this is one of those one-hit wonders. Is the only one of these ever built. And funny to do this one and Maverick at the same time, because Maverick was always rumored to be. That was always the enthusiast joke, was that it was an Aquatrax, and it certainly was not. But bring this down just a little bit more. Okay. There is our first little bit. And next to this, I would say, is the station and launch track for the main ride. Well, but the thing is that they know what sells, and if the Aquatrax isn't selling, then they need to think of something else. So it's really just a matter of what's big in the market right now, what's the interest for things going out there, and what's going to sell and what's not. So that's the biggest thing for them, is just trying to figure out what's gonna drive their overall sales. Since in the end, it's a business, and you got to figure out, sometimes more than creativity would be, just what is the thing that's going to get you the purchase. I was quite surprised to see them sell one of their single rail. Now, granted, the only thing with the single rail, it doesn't have anything to do with the rail. It's just inline seating. But I was surprised to see Intamin sell one of those as quickly as they had. Good. I mean, it certainly looks nice to see. Some manufacturers do. RMC has a patent on the single rail, the bending of that type of rail. So nobody else is going to do that kind of a box beam design. And that's why when you look at the Intamin one, it's not that. It's basically just standard track with some flat plates on it. Okay. So what we've got is our launch lift hill. Kind of want this nice little swoopy top hat type element. I think the last time we did something similar to this, before kind of popping out on this side and then doing the big drop. This one may slide in a little bit, just because I think it's a little too far away right now. It would be neat though. I would always like to see on a lot of these like once and done type coasters, see the layout examples that marketing was using to try and sell them with, uh, or any of the proposals that they had done. Just because I would love to see what the manufacturer would have suggested for some of these layouts. Depends on the park as to what they're looking for. In a lot of cases, you're looking for a specific type of thing. So you'll say, all right, we want a family coaster, or we want a thrill coaster, or we want a whatever fills whichever gap it is that they're looking for type coaster, and then from there, they'll probably send out some requests for proposals to a number of coaster manufacturers and say, okay, here's the space that we have. They might give some more specifics, like here's where we want the station to be. We want it to have couple inversions, or wanted to do whichever this and the other thing. More specifically, they're going to say we wanted to have a like 48-inch rider height requirement, and we want it to have X amount of people per hour. And after that, then the coaster manufacturers will put together some suggestions for the RFP, and then once that comes in, then the company will review it and see where, if they want to select one of those to move forward with for a design. So it certainly varies between parks and it varies between projects, but that's a lot of how these kind of things go, which also means that there's a lot of layouts out there and just proposals and things that just never get seen, just because there's like so much out there as far as um, just proposals and stuff go that never made it past the drawing board, which that's what I find interesting. See, six is interested in right now is stuff that they can market. So like they want records, but not actual records. So things like the world's tallest Larson loop or whatever that may be, which they'll call a coaster, of course, and piss off all the enthusiasts. But things like that is really where um, Six Flags is looking these days. Um, so records, but not actually records. So kind of cheapo records, I guess you could say. Um, Six and or Cedar is now less so interested in that, I would say, which is a good thing. I'm very happy to see that at least somebody's more moved away from it. But it's all about trying to get people through the door, and sometimes it's stupid names of rides, or it's just stupid records that get people through the door. So that's what they're going to see. All right, so it's going to be at least here. $45. That's too much. And yeah, I mean, niche records fits it pretty well. That's really what it is. Three, four. I want to go just a little bit further. 60, I don't think I can again. We'll see if it can get back up to 55. We're probably going to need to do a little bit more work there. Okay. I have some concerns if that's even going to be possible. But let's see. One, two, three, four, five, six. Have another one of these little skim hill things. Yeah, there are a lot of coaster manufacturers, or there's a lot of instances where stuff like that happens, where it's initially wanted to be something, and then either the budget doesn't work out for whatever reason, or there's just some kind of an issue, and then another manufacturer may come in and take over and do the whole thing. So it's not totally uncommon to see that. And park shop around. It's while also thrilling and interesting layouts and things like that are key on the list. It's also a business, so you're out there trying to find the right thing that's going to get the most guests through the entrance while probably spending the least amount of money. That's a key thing. Okay. Then I want to get a block break here. Entrance exit. And let's see what we can do from here. So, rid of this. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of behind the scenes manufacturer, strife and politics and all sorts of things like that. So it's definitely not it's not always everybody's happy and building coasters. Sometimes there's a lot of arguments and things that take place just as far as rights of things and proposals and stealing ideas and all that sort of stuff. Okay. Figure out how I gotta get to the end here. Happy and building coasters. That's what everybody wants, right? Okay. Trying to get This threaded through everything is going to pose a little bit of a challenge, I think. We're good right up until we hit that piece. To be honest, it might just be easier to come in here and kind of wrap it up. That elevation change is going to be a little bit much to deal with. So we could always just keep it flat here. Not totally satisfied. Problem is we've used about every one of the height differentials in this spot. So we've got 5 and 20, which don't really jive super well trying to get another ride through there. This may work. Do this. Wow, we're so close. So close. Question is, can I get over right here? The answer is not really. We can instead try and do this. Need to go 2 more back for that. You could almost call this like an outward banked corner too. But not get ourselves into that. Of course it's right in the way. Of course it is. Of course it is right in the way. This here. Get a big turn up in here. I can maybe get this done. Okay. There we go, perfect. A little worried there for a minute that it wasn't going to fit quite right. It still doesn't fit quite as well as it probably ought to, but all right. Put a second flat piece at the bottom here. Then we are all done. And the question is, how well is this even going to run? Since we didn't test it at all beforehand. All right, with the water coaster, the mock water coaster trains, probably the best bet. And what I want to do though is, oh shoot! All right, we need to rework that, but can do that at a different time. Let's see here. This is Mini Roller Coaster 1, so let's go into Edit Ride Vehicles and look up Mini Roller Coaster 1. And these vehicles have a mass of 240, which is awfully low. So let's get in here and change this. Hey, Snappy Pickles, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. All right, so Mini Roller Coaster 1 is number 87, so we'll go Ride Set Mass 087, and let's give it 500. Oh, I'm just turned around. It's 19. All right, Ride Set Mass 019, 500. Let's see what that does for us. Makes it a little bit fast. Gerstlauer. It's a heavy Intamin and Gerstlauer day today. That was the majority of folks. Oh, we need the brake run earlier than we thought. I mean, it pays to be a, or it's good to be a fan of something. I like my Gerstlauer, not maybe as much as I could, but I do like a good Gerstlauer. I think other manufacturers do it better, but what I will say I like about Gerstlauer is that they have an incredible like ride programming design right now. Just the stuff like Back Down and just the Fury and some of these like backwards and forwards, and I mean really, we'll call them what they are. They're gimmick coasters, but they're really, really well done, and I love what they're doing with it. Oh, thanks for the follow, Mr. Snappy Pickles. All right, let's set this again. Ride set mass. Whenever you reset a coaster, if you change the mass, you've got to do it again. We're gonna go for 450 here, see if it's any slightly better. I'm worried about this hill right there. As long as it makes it, I'm good. Like, it can be as slow as it wants to go on everything else. Because I'm a little bit fast over the top hat. Just faster than I'd like. Ah, well, my mistake. Thank you very much, Ms. Snappy Pickles. I wonder, well, the lift hill needs to be faster for one. Probably 7 miles per hour. And yeah, I see what you're saying, V1. I mean, it's too fast through the first bit for sure. I don't necessarily mind the second half being a little bit slower, but it is definitely too fast for that whole set up there. So let me change this again. Let's see what 350 looks like. I might be able to slow it down enough. I just need it to be, I just need to make this hill right here. As long as it does that, we're all right. Blocking system seems all right. I'm not getting caught up on. Well, I will be getting caught up right here at the top, I think. Just for a second, so not too bad. Actually, if I slowed the lift hill down, I'd probably be okay. Let's see. See, that's too slow. 119, 400. Give that a try. Maybe it, and then we'll move along to the next thing. All right, yeah, I'm satisfied with that. And now let's see if the 6 miles an hour slowed us down enough that we can get this guy back home before he gets to this block break. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so that's set up fine now. I am happy with that. So we'll call that number 8. Our Atlantis adventure. Okay. So the last one it was a bit of a challenge as I was going back through trying to figure out which one I wanted to do that still met our theme today of lift and launch. So I chose one that I wanted to look at simply because I think most people probably don't know much about it. And that is a coaster called Inferno at Cinecittà World in Rome. So this park opened a couple years back in 14. Had an Intamin 10 inversion and and then this coaster also has this like mock coaster looking thing that's may or may not be a coaster depending on how you define coasters. But Inferno is an enclosed Intamin. They call it their multi-dimensional coaster. It really just means it's got a drop track in it or some other kind of a thing. So this one's got a lift hill and then a vertical drop track and then a launch out of the drop track. Unfortunately, we can't do a vertical drop track in the game, so we're really not getting that squared away as far as that goes. But I figured I would just sort of do more generically so indoor lift and launch coaster kind of as our last one. But we can't see a whole lot, but we'll go ahead and look at what we can here. 2015, 2015. So here, let's just take a look at this. Oh. Just try a drop track. Yeah, thought about it. I didn't actually realize the movie studio was getting theirs as limb, which is a little surprising, to be honest. If you can find that, you do link it to me. I have this one just because I thought the actual theming is pretty cool. There's some just interesting projection type stuff, and I really like this line art animated style of artwork with some of these curved screens and everything. It actually looks really nice. You can't see much of the coaster itself, but there's a fair amount of pretty cool stuff. I don't think I've ever seen a lights on POV of this one, but I am all for it. Let me take a look at this one, and then I'll click on that link, so that's cool. It's really going to be just a bunch of helixes and small turns and twists and everything, and then this drop track here, which is a really cool show scene. This big monster thing coming in. Of the flames, and then all of a sudden the whole thing drops. So very cool, in my opinion. All right, let's give this a try. Oh, you sent me a theme park review one. Ugh. But okay, so at least they can see the drop track going on. So cool curve screens and things like that. We'll mid lift here up to the drop. Get the actual drop. And then after that, just a bunch of corners and things like that. So we'll stick with that as our thing today. All right, so let's take a look. Let's take a look. Go with mini coaster again, just because it's probably the most useful of the ride types. Darkmare has a 5-car train. I couldn't really think of what car to use. I was trying to figure out the best option because I wanted 2x2 seating, wanted a lap bar, and wanted it to be that sort of boxy overall look. But there's just really not a good one that fits that so well. So I ended up going with the limb trains, even though it's got over the shoulders. Movie world will focus on more on show scenes. Well, that'd be nice. Be good to have the show scenes. It seems like a nice little coaster that they've got going on there. Why that's not letting me get any more than 4? Let's turn that cheat back on. Got our 5th one there. Okay. Well, let's have our small lift hill, or maybe not small, but reasonably so. And really, we're just trying to keep it in compact in here. Yeah, I mean it's a family coaster. It's not a thrill coaster by any means or things like that. So I mean nothing wrong with that. It's just not a not a huge, not like a Verbolten or something, which is still a family coaster also, but slightly less. So okay. And then I guess what I'll do is just have a little midsection launch here, rather than have the drop track in there. So just since we aren't going to easily do that drop track. I'll just put that boost here right in the middle. We call the upper bounds here. We keep everything compact. Probably get away with some stuff on this side. Yeah, I feel like the way that you would end up having to do it would be splitting the car, probably reversing it, splitting the car into each individual track piece, dropping it down, and then putting them all back together again. Kind of how somebody did the thrill lift years and years and years ago. Well, not somebody being Livis on New Element, but that's probably the way that I would think you could do it. Um, Not the most straightforward of processes by any means, but that's, I think, probably the best way to get around it. All right, this dropped in here. If it'll even make it there, that might be a little bit. Okay. Actually, that kind of works all right for a small family coaster, I think. Now it's just a matter of trying to figure out how to get things back, knowing that we're so compact in here. It fit? It cannot fit. 25. Suppose we can just drop this down. Almost acts like a station fly-through, perhaps. Okay. Got cleared underneath that one. To be honest, I think we're be all right. Really hoping to be able to get a final helix of sorts out of here. I call that, because that way, making this work. Wonder if there's a way to do this a little bit differently. No. Actually, almost. That would have fit potentially reasonably well. We'll give this brakes here. And then over here, four. Okay. See how that rides. Entrance not yet built. Hey, so welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you for coming on back. We're just wrapping up here, I think. So this is based on Inferno in Italy. And we, in lieu of our drop track, we have a little mid-lift or mid-ride launch section here. Oh no, hopefully your computer's alright. Hopefully you're able to get it back. A bunch of nice smooth corners, not too much drama here with anything in particular. A little bit wider than we initially intended to make it, but not awful. Finish up there. Little drop into the brakes. And call it a day. Number 9. Okay. Well, clear out our ride as per tradition. Okay, so that was 9 coasters today with our theme of lift and launch. As to recap, if you didn't make it here for the whole thing, we started out with a something like Powder Keg, which does not have the correct track style here, but for ease of build, I think we stuck with the B&M. Really just doing this launch here in the beginning, lift hill midway through, as we found most of them to be. So not too bad there, followed by the Curse of Novgorod at Hansa Park. I actually really liked how this one turned out. This was a pretty nice Eurofighter, where we've got the potentially enclosed sections here if you did the theming like the real thing. And that nice butterfly turnaround, which honestly only looks good from 2 angles. But I kind of like how it turns out. You could probably screen it on the backside with some trees, perhaps. Single roll here. Up and around into the brakes. This is a little different than the real thing. Alright, next was Takabisha. Actually, I never realized that when we were watching this earlier. It's a pretty cool interaction. We did not do the beyond vertical drop here. We could easily do that. I just didn't really want to go through with the hack, and I was having some trouble with it at the time. Then after that, we went to Firechaser Express, which actually this little layout turned out pretty well. So this could be like Firechaser, could be like Pegasus Express, any of those in particular. Did not do the backwards launch, which you can do with some, with a little bit of hacking and operational mode, playing around. That's an option anyway. But instead, we just did a third or a second launch here, kind of midway through. So we have launch out of the station, lift hill, and then launch number 2 right down here. But all intertwined and act really well in there. This one is the Streamline Train. This is one of Space K's new ones. Streamline Train's in his Christmas pack. If you take a look for that, if you actually go back to the last, I guess it's the last one that we did, whichever the Christmas one is, you can download it from there. I've got a link in there. Then we went over to the Intamin inverted coaster. This is based on Dragon King at Desure Summerland, family launch coaster. So it's got this little boost, almost hard to call it a launch. out of here, but little boost into the lift hill. And then our nice kind of swoopy, cornery, helix heavy inverted coaster for the whole family that does not have any inversions in it. You could easily throw some in there, though, if you wanted to. Then we took our break and came back with our little Veil of Dark or Gekion Live coaster with the indoor shooting section, the lift hill for the launch, and the inversion using Space K's Extreme Spinning Coaster trains. Again, plus Space K, as you said there. From there, we did Maverick, or something similar to Maverick. Not very happy with this layout, but really just needed to keep moving. If you go, I think 2 streams back, maybe 1 stream, you will see another Maverick that I think is probably a little bit better than this. It's held up well, but this one's okay. Then we've got this one here also with the Atlantis adventure based of Lotte World in South Korea. We're using Space K's mock water coaster trains for this one, since I think they're the closest option. And then finally, we finished up with Inferno at Cinecittà World in Italy, just to give some variety here and to look at a coaster that's not as well known, perhaps, but still looks like a good time. So that is our 9 for the day, and hopefully you enjoyed it and got something out of it. Feel free to suggest some new stream options or ideas if you have them. We had a good conversation kind of midstream today about some of those, which I will be taking down. So hopefully we can get something here decent for future streams. I've got a few ideas written down for the next couple, but certainly as time goes on, it will get harder and harder to fill these themes. But thank you for coming by. If this was your first time, thank you for finding the channel. Feel free to go follow my YouTube channel. That's where I post all the recordings of this, and then also other RCT2 review videos, and also plenty of hacking tutorials and other things. Coming soon, I'm about to submit a park that I've been working on for a couple of years. Once that's done, I'm going to start a front to back coaster design stream, which I will basically be building a design submission for New Element, which is basically a coaster and theming and stuff around it. And I'm going to stream the whole thing and talk through custom supports and talk through layout planning and just all the details and things that I've gotten asked for, but are harder to put into a stream. So that's that's one of the thoughts for that coming up. I figured it would be a little nice break from the larger parks. So definitely ready to go for doing that one. So we'll do some custom scenery and hopefully a pretty cool coaster layout with lots of nice supports and landscaping and pathways and all the other fun stuff that hopefully you can learn something from. So anyway, thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you have a nice day, and I will see you back here maybe in 2 weeks. Not sure if it will be 2 or 3, but coming up, I will certainly let you all know. Definitely follow the channel here on Twitch for the notification. So until next time, thanks very much, and have a good day. Bye, guys.